Welcome back to the Joy Hour podcast. We are here today with Jenn Gray, and I am so excited to have this episode. We've been talking for quite a while about getting together and finally have time to get to know each other better, and most importantly, get to know you, Jenn. I know you have a lot going on. You've got your own podcast, Be Genuine, podcast with Jenn, and I know you have just a lot of other things going on that take up a lot of your time. And I guess one thing overall I'm really impressed with, a little bit I know about you, is the balance. And when I have talked to you a couple of times, you've seemed very calm, and yet I know enough about you, 4 children and the podcast, and also health and life insurance agent, and I'm sure many other things that you do that we're going to hear about today. But that's just one thing that was appealing to me when I get to meet other people, is when they do have a lot of things going on that take a lot of time and energy, but come across calm and peaceful. So how do you do it? Tell us.
That is a great question. I'm just kidding. I have fooled you well.
Yeah.
Just kidding. First of all, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to join you on the Joy Hour. I absolutely love what you're doing and the mission that you are seeking, just to create spaces for people to experience joy. And honestly, I think that's what it's all about. There's been a lot of very low seasons of life. And so I live in the moment now, and I just so desire to have a life that's full of peace and gratitude. One of my favorite quotes is the fact that literally worry and gratitude cannot exist in your mind at the same time, and or stress and gratitude cannot exist. And I'm like, okay, well then if stress can't exist if I have gratitude, then if I live in gratitude, then my life's going to be much more peaceful and head in the right direction. So honestly, that is how I try to live life. I totally believe every day is a gift, and although every day is not easy, it definitely is a gift. And so I just living in the moment. Yeah, I do have 4 kids, and so there's a lot of moments to live in, and they are growing up faster than mama would like it to be. So yeah, just trying to savor this life in the same sense of living it to the fullest is, how I would like my life to be lived. Definitely not perfect by any means, but yeah, that's definitely a huge mantra of my life.
I love it. I love it. And that's confirmation. Something you said there, I've heard twice this week, about how you can't experience the two things opposite, opposing things at one time. And you said it so well there, to be grateful and focus on that, and to live it one moment at a time.
Mm-hmm.
In my past, I used to get so overwhelmed by thinking about, next week or next month. And not to say you shouldn't plan, but I think there's so much to be said, especially as a parent, to live in the moment. And yeah, so real quick, what ages are your kids?
Okay, so my oldest is 14, so I have 2 boys, 2 girls. So my oldest daughter is 14, then my son is 11, my daughter is 10, and my youngest son is 8. So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
hmm good times,
Very,
busy times.
very similar. I've got 3, and I can only imagine if I had 4, and mine are similar ages.
Nah, it's just one more.
If one more by the time you, that's what I've heard too. Like, the whole two, it's kind of, yeah, it just, and then my buddy's
Yeah,
got 5, and I'm like, oh boy, it's just crazy after that.
right. Yeah, it's like once you have 3, you're already outnumbered. So it would just add in one more. So
Right, right. So yeah, tell me a little bit about yourself. Either start with, what you have going on right now, or start from wherever you want to. Really, it's about getting to know you today.
cool. Yeah. We'll start with Be Genuine with Jen podcast, and that kind of leads into what got me there, why the podcast. You did also mention I am a life and health agent. So that is what I do by day. But actually, if you rewind it a little bit further, I actually used to work on a staff at a church. I graduated with a degree in speech communications and a minor in youth ministry. I wanted to be for high school girls what I needed in high school. And so as the culture shifted and changed, typically in the church setting, there's just a male youth pastor. And so what I wanted to do was to develop a girl counterpart, so that I could help with the girls in the ministry, in the way that the male youth pastor could. So I kind of pioneered that at my home church. And then fast forward 2019, I actually went through a divorce and lost it all, lost everything, lost my position, lost my community, and a lot. And then where do you go from there, right? What do you do when you didn't want to lose your passion in the midst of life's changes? And so I had to just sink really deep and just know that God would use that in some way. You know, it may not be tomorrow, but God gifted me that and God gave me that calling and that purpose. And I could hang on to the fact that I knew that, we are created on purpose and for a purpose. And I knew I wanted to add value to people. And so, honestly, I worked at a high school for a little bit and just trying to recuperate life. And then found this agency. And when I tell you, of all the surprising things in my life, the most surprising is the fact that I'm an insurance agent. Because I mean, it's like, which one of these doesn't belong? But I found a great agency that genuinely just wanted to take care of people. And I saw a very practical way to take care of people. And so for anyone out there who may even be listening, that I think it's a huge thing and a huge reminder for me that my purpose wasn't found in my position. And so even my position at my job, in a sense, was taken away, that my purpose didn't go away, right? It looks different now. But that doesn't change, whether life may hit you with, something that's crazy, and unexpected. And just to know that nobody can steal that from you, it was a really, really huge reminder for me. And I just kind of had to pivot and figure out, what does it look like? How do I add value to people? So found this agency, did that, and then my world was rocked again last March, and I found myself completely starting from ground zero. And this last year, it was, if it could be burned down, it was burned down. And I knew that what I had was my faith, and I had my four kids. And through that, I just believed that I was not going to put anything back together in my life that did not align with who I am and where I was going. So I continued in insurance. I created a new brand for myself, and my genuine passion is for people to see that your mindset can get you unstuck from anything in life. And it was only my mindset of knowing that life happens for me and not to me, that I'm not a victim to my circumstances, that I can learn from it and I can grow from it and I can move forward from it, and that change can happen in one day. And all of those things, that I'm like, what, I'm going to start a podcast. I was reading a book called The Reinvention Formula by Craig Siegel, and the chapter was called Messy Action. And I knew what action I needed to take. And instead of believing that I had to rebuild my life financially to the multiple six-figure goal that I had, and I thought that's what it was going to take for me to have a platform, I'm like, what? I'm just going to share life as someone who's completely rebuilding at the age of 40. And I don't come on as an expert in life. I come on as our authenticity is our superpower. Let's lean into who we are and let's grow together and become the most, powerful versions of ourselves. And ultimately, that's what we were created to be, right? To be, who God called us to be, and and to get back to those basics, and then just go. So I answered that in a lot of different ways, but I don't know what you want to dive through. So, but that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Well, I love it. I love it. There's a few things there. And I also am a part of and just joined CLS and absolutely love the group there, and quite a few others that share the similar view of being real, being
Mm-hmm.
authentic, and therefore being vulnerable. Um, it's not easy at first. And I'm sure you've experienced and probably still do. There's sometimes even people in our lives that might make a comment or discourage the openness of taking what we've been through and speaking about it. Um, these days you put something out there and it's out there. Anybody can view the podcast, and yet the goal for us is to help people, right?
Exactly.
It's to help the ones that might still be living in denial, right? To not break through and break out of what they're going through. So I just admire everyone I've met through CLS, and of course, admire you for being open and vulnerable about those key topics. Out of our pain can come a purpose, but I don't think it can unless we talk about it. And
Totally agree.
that's so healing these days when people, go, you know what, I can connect to what Jen shared either on a podcast or on a phone call or many different platforms and ways that you can reach somebody. But have you experienced that? I'm sure you have. Do you have any comments as far as people that have reached out to you and said, thank you for being open because you did. I now feel that I can.
Absolutely. That's what ultimately, and it's kind of funny that this is where I am. So, way back when I was working with high school girls, I prided myself on being an open book. I prided myself on just, laying it all out there. But even in that, I only shared the parts that I wanted to share. And it was almost like this false vulnerability. And what I learned after all of this, after it all just got ripped down and ripped out. And I think sometimes the culture is like be all things to all people. And so you're worried more about your story fitting in and being comfortable for everybody else. And in that, you miss the connection. And so that's where in this, I'm like, if I'm going to share a podcast, I'm just going to be real. I'm going to give grace to the people, I'm just like out to share other people's dirty laundry, like I don't think that's helpful, but being real about where I was and what I've experienced, that's where there's been these true connections. There are the DMs of, oh my goodness, like you gave voice to what I'm experiencing. And like, and this, that's what makes it all worth it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, if my pain can give one other person hope because I'm making it through, right? I'm not on the other side of a lot of different things, but I'm making it through. And here's what's getting me through this. And so having that roadmap as you're walking through pain and honoring your story enough to let other people learn from it. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts that we have. And it's like the most rich gift that we have is our story, is our truth, is what we go through. And so when we share that with somebody else and we essentially let them connect their story to ours. And so sometimes I share in, not super specifics, just so someone else's pain can connect to my pain. So they feel a part of my story and they feel
Mm-hmm.
the part of the resolution of it as well. And so I think here's one of my other favorite statements is that everybody has a story. And so when you remind people, like some people will get on there and be like, oh my gosh, I just thought you were just like this uber positive person and life had just been so great for you. And I'm like, the smile is so real because the pain was so real.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only reason I do have joy is because I know what it's like to not. I know what it's like to feel despair, but trust that life really wasn't over yet. And so I think if more people, even if more people find the freedom to use their story, and I hear people that are like, I'm not that interesting. I'm like, well, let's talk. You ask people a couple of questions, and I'm like, do you realize the strength that took you to get through that? And so almost like even getting to use this platform as an opportunity to highlight other people's tenacity and other people's resilience and speak life into other people who think, oh, that's really cool that you can inspire people. I'm like, no, you can too. All
Mm-hmm.
it takes is a mouthpiece. And that's one thing I love about social media. I get to speak to strangers every single day when I go live that normally, 20 years ago, you would have had to have a platform and a speaking
Mm-hmm.
contract and all of that. And so we have such a gift, and it can be used as a gift. I mean, it can be used for crazy stuff too, but it can be used as such a gift to be able to, to share your light with other people. And so that would be my biggest encouragement for anyone out there that is listening to say you do have a story, and the pain that you've gone through or the hardships you've gone through literally could be the roadmap for someone else to see that there is hope. And the only way that that doesn't happen is if you just keep your mouth shut. And so I would say speak it. And it is crazy how, I mean, like you, I've never met you, right? It's just everything is through this glass screen. And again, it's so powerful that stories get to connect you. And stories are powerful, and your story is the most powerful. And so I would say anybody just turn on that live and go
Mm-hmm.
and use your vulnerability. It genuinely is your superpower. People aren't looking for a cookie cutter. We try to fit in, we try to make our lives like watered down, but that's boring. Like people want to know who you are. And so yeah, that would be my massive encouragement too for anybody else to remind them they have a story.
Absolutely. And I think that as we encourage people to realize all of our stories, They're similar, but they're different. And I think the key reason that they are different is to reach different people. There's people that even will hear this podcast that we're doing today, and they're going to message you because something you shared today, and it resonated with them. And those are the people that you are meant to reach with your story. Of course, we have
Right.
our children, and we're working our best to protect our children from falling or getting hurt, right? But if they do fall down, guess what? They know they can talk to us, right? Because now, I mean, they know our stories. If you're getting on and you're doing this with a podcast or sharing your story, and I don't want to sidetrack with mine and get off in the weeds with it, I can share another time. But with addiction and everything I went through, there was a lot of times where I thought, I'm never going to tell my kids anything. And then it became, I was going to tell my kids just the broad stroke. Yeah, dad struggled with alcohol, and just keep it broad. As they grow, I've got a little more detailed with some things. And my daughter, one time, she asked me some questions about drugs, and it was just her and I going to a Celebrate Recovery meeting, and she's like, "Dad, this and that," and I just feel it's best to let her know that Dad's been through some things, and God has guided and protected and called me the entire way back to Him, back to that relationship with Him that I had disconnected from. But I think that's important. So whether we're reaching our kids through these times of sharing, or we're reaching a million people because of the podcast, I think the key thing is to be real vulnerable. You said something there about false vulnerability. I'd never heard that said before, but I think for a majority of my life, I was like that. I would share a little bit to let people think I was being open, but I sure wasn't going to share the dirty little secrets, the things I do when nobody sees me. And again, I'm not going to get into those today, but I am an open book. And if anybody listening ever wants to hear more, please, if I can help, because out of the pain, there comes a purpose, and that purpose is to continue to grow, continue to learn. We're far from perfect, right? There's not such a thing as perfection, but there are
Yes.
tools, and I'm going to ask you the question about tools here in a second, but there are tools each of us can use each day that help us be better. Again, not perfect, but better to overcome the ongoing challenges of grief and loss, and some of the things you started to share there. What are some tools that you've used in this last year? You mentioned, again, just recently, last year, rebuilding and starting over. And I'm sure you had days that were just the world's crushing down on you, and anxiety and depression and fear, and probably a lot of emotions that you dealt with then, and maybe even they flare up once in a while now. But what could you share with the audience, whether it's two or whether it's 5 or 10 different tools that you use on a daily basis? Kind of just start maybe even with your morning routine or anything you do
Mm-hmm.
to keep yourself, um, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, totally. No, I love this question because this is what I'm so passionate about, is the mindset when everything is and I, just to give a little bit of detail to when I say burn to the ground, I mean, just to just share so that I could connect with somebody else, that when I say that, I don't just mean like, I had a bad day or I got a flat tire. I essentially had to completely uproot my life, and everything was gone. I had to rebuild relationships. I was in a relationship in Texas, 12 hours away from Georgia. I uprooted. I left immediately, had $18 in my account, and I had no idea what I was going to do. I didn't know how I was going to survive. I connected with an old neighbor. They're in their 70s and they're like family to me. And I said, I don't know what to do. And they said, you can stay here as long as you need to. And I'm like, okay. And it was just every day was one foot in front of the other. It was, okay, Jen, we're not going to run a marathon tomorrow. We're going to get up. And my morning routine became so huge for me because as I'm like putting pieces together, I knew how to make money. I knew how to sell insurance. Okay. So I'm like, okay, so we're going to stick to what we know. But I had to everything else seemed so out of control that had to control what I could control to get myself in this space of, okay, you're going to be okay. So I woke up early every morning, and I've worked out every single day since March 18th, 2023, when I everything crumbled. And so I'm like, I'm going to work out, because I know that to me is, it's a mental therapy just as much as it is physical anything for me. It like gets myself in the mind space of, you can do hard things.
Mm.
Like you can, Jen, you're going to push your body. You can do hard things. You can show up for yourself. And then I was prayer and journaling. It was every morning, just, okay, God, I trust you. I'm going to rebuild in a way that's honoring to you and put the pieces back together. And I trust you. I don't have the answers. And so I feel like it was like those, like I had the flashlight that was like the one that was like right there in front of my feet. I couldn't see 5 years. I didn't see a
Right.
5-year plan. I saw
Mhm.
one day at a time. Okay. And so I would work out, pray and journal, and then I was big on podcast, and it was just getting my mind in the right space of not seeping into victimhood, not seeping into, blame or anything. It was like, I genuinely want to heal. And so that's what I focused on. So I have been a broken record, and for me it was not even just like Monday through Friday. I'm like, this is a 7-day a week thing, because then when I know, if I can control the mornings and I get myself in the space to know I can do hard things, and I have passion, but it takes discipline to create results. And so I'm going to put the discipline in and pivot and just go and just trust that each thing is going to happen as it needs to. And so the first thing was getting enough money to be able to fly to Texas and move everything back to Georgia. And I did it in like 30 days. I made enough money to fly there, get a U-Haul loaded up, and move back. And it's like every single thing was just day by day by day by day. And so that's ultimately, what it took. But that morning routine and reading books, reinvention formula was so big. It's so huge for me. And reading things, like The Magic of Thinking Big, I went back to that book, and, Think and Grow Rich. And I was just, in Mel Robbins' podcast I love. And my business mentor from last year, her name is Jessie Lee Ward. I want to always shout her out. She is incredible, and she actually was in a totally different business, but I found her and I loved her. She was passionate, and she was different, and she was successful, and she was just genuine. I'm like, okay, like this is what I can resonate with,
Yeah.
And so I had followed her for a few years, and I was listening to her, and I was in her coaching, and she had a mindset coaching as well. And so I was just like letting it all sink in. And, and part of my story too is that in the midst of all of this, so that was March of last year, she had actually gotten diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer out of absolutely nowhere in February of 2023, and ultimately passed away in September of 2023. And so it was like, my world got rocked and rocked and rocked and rocked and rocked. And it's just like, you're almost like, you come up to breathe and you're like, okay, I'm doing this one step forward. But it was just that kind of year, and then my agency went crazy and got, everything got nuts with that in the fall. But what I just kept staying focused on was, okay, I can do hard things. Like, God didn't just like forget about me down here. Like and something else I kept reminding myself, I'd be like this close to like this really, really big deal that would be like life changing financially. And then it got delayed or didn't happen. And I kept reminding myself, and maybe this is just false positivity. I don't care. It worked for me. I just kept saying, okay, God, I know that I'm not the kind of person that can handle that kind of success yet. So what do I need to learn in this pain? Because I also know that the most painful seasons of life are where our biggest lessons are learned. And I'm like, okay, God, if I'm not done learning in this pit that I'm in, then I want to learn. I want to heal. I want to restore what was so broken so that I can have a renewed vision for the future. But I know that only is going to come when you're ready for me to have it. And so even that mental change, so that if I had a letdown in a client or something, like, okay, we have an abundance mindset. This is not a scarcity world. There are millions of people who need what I have. Like, okay, I need to pivot. I need to be innovative. I need to be creative. I need to, keep thinking and keep aligning with the right people, which ultimately led me to CLS and led me to a different agency and led me to the podcast and this other networking group. And so again, that didn't all come in my lap at one time. It was just one day at a time, controlling what I could control, staying in the right mindset of just, I'm going to do this, and I can do this with never being alone. But yeah, so those are the tools. I mean, it was every single day, and it literally was like a life preserver that kept me afloat. And yeah, so that's the only reason I'm standing here today, and with somewhat sanity. I don't know. So
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. And it's so confirming to just hear other people's stories about their kind of morning routine and what's worked for them. And there's a lot of similarities. They can be slightly different. Some people it's meditation. Um, a lot of us it's prayer. There's days that I start out and I do have time for some scriptures and sit down and read the Bible. There's times that I've missed, of course. There's times where I just do the audio. But I tell you, if I miss a few days in a row of my morning routine, like I just have a slump for a week and I don't hit the gym, I don't read, I don't meditate, I don't pray, I'm off. And I tell you, a day or two, I can not notice it. But if I go 3, 4, 5 days, I just, and I'm thankful for that. I think that God instilled that in me and all of us to remind us how
mm,
fragile this life is that we a lot of times think I've thought I can control it, work's good, or right now the bank account's good, or my health is good. And as you mentioned with your friend, your mentor,
mhm,
and it hits home. I lost my dad, but the C word, the
yeah,
cancer. I don't, I don't want to do as I did for so many years and take a day for granted. There's many people younger than me that aren't here anymore because of the C word or because of a car accident. And just a lot you said there, I think is so important that each person find a way to live every day like you're dying. Like it's pretty obvious. Every day we're living, if we're hearing this, if we're breathing, every day we're living. Let's live. But let's remind ourselves every day we're dying too. Like what did I really accomplish today that really matters? Was it another piece of clothing? Was it a new car? Like, yay, the success. Nothing wrong with a nice jacket, nothing wrong with a nice safe car. But
mhm,
like, what's my why? You know, I'm 46 years old. What am I doing tomorrow? What am I doing next week? But most of the people I've been around this last couple of years, there's a very similar view on life is live it 1 minute at a time, make goals and plans for a 6 month, 1 year, and maybe 5 years, stretch it out there. 5 years, I want to be here. Nothing wrong with that. But don't get so tied up and caught up in it. Like laugh a
yeah,
little, you set a goal and a year later, you're like, what was I thinking? I'm not doing that. Like a year ago, I was going to start a plumbing company, electrical company. I've been in construction all my life. So I was going to start a couple more construction divisions. And the people in the office were like, really, Tom? And now that I'm a little more sober, a little more clear-headed, I'm definitely not starting a plumbing company or electrical company ever in this lifetime. It's not what I need, but I would like
right.
to learn how to, step into some other areas. I'd love to write a book sometime,
Mm,
things like that. But thank you so much. That encourages and confirms with my own journey how important that morning is.
right.
Can you share, just be a little vulnerable here as far as days you've missed? Like when you've missed a day, because I know there's got to be a
Mhm,
day, whether it's holidays or
yeah.
winter time, right? When you've missed a couple of days in a row of that routine you mentioned, what kind of emotions or feelings go through your mind?
Oh yeah, so that's why I shifted to 7 days, because I started like even like 2 days on the weekend was like enough to make me feel like I was lost. And like I mean, and that's where I say it was just as much probably like a mental therapy, because it would get me in the right headspace. And it's almost like I craved
Mm.
that feeling, that drive and that focus that the morning routine gave me. And so even on the weekends, I mean, that's ultimately when I was like, I have to do this 7 days in a row. And even that, I feel like it probably gets a little crazy. And even like in the really, really downtime, I mean, I was doing cold showers. I was doing like everything to remind myself I was a strong person. And it was, I mean, I don't know if that's messed up in my head or what, but it worked. Just to put myself through that pain and be like, you can do this. You can do hard things. And So yeah, but honestly, other than those, I couldn't, because it's like it was I couldn't miss, because it was such like a, like I needed this to, I mean, I was in like survival mode, like complete survival mode, and it was like that was my one thing that I could tangibly hold on to. So when I say it, like it being a big deal, like it was more than just like, oh, this is a cute little, I'm going to post it on Instagram that I'm up reading in the morning, and it's not, it wasn't that. And so if you're hearing that and you don't have a morning routine, I'm just saying that I challenge you, and I'll just give even a really, really, even a cooler example than my own self. Is that my 14-year-old daughter,
Mm-hmm.
she she's an orchestra girl, right? She doesn't play sports or anything, and so but she saw mom at the gym, or mom working out, or whatever, and she's like, hey, I'd love to go to the gym with you. Well, I'm like, well, that would be cool. So January 1st, I got a gym membership that included a free guest, and I'm like, okay, well, I have to do it at 5 in the morning so that I can be back before getting the kids ready for school. I mean, y'all, she's 14. And I'm like, but, and she's like, okay, y'all, what is today's date? We are April 17th. My 14-year-old daughter has gone every day that I've gone to the gym, minus only a couple of days, since January 1st.
Wow.
And I will tell you, it's not only done anything like physically for her, but I mean, her grades are up, her confidence is up, just her belief in herself is up, because she's showing herself, and she loves sleep. She can sleep late, and she's showing herself, I can do hard things. I can do this. And so even today, she's like, I'm really tired, but I'm like, well, I'm almost ready to pick you up. Or you still want to go? Because she's with her dad this week. And she's like, no, 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 I'm still going to go. And I'm like, those are the days when you show up for yourself, when you have every reason and excuse not to, that you remind yourself, you know what? I am worth saying yes to. Like, my goals are worth saying yes to. I'm worth showing up for.
Mm-hmm.
And so watching her transformation, even since January 1st, has been the coolest thing. And so any parents out there, if you're not doing something like that, like, bring your kids along, let them be your accountability. There's many mornings I've only gotten up
Mm-hmm.
because I knew Addison was expecting mama to get up. And it's because, hello,
Yeah.
life happens and you get
Yeah.
exhausted, and 5 a.m. comes early. But yeah, that's definitely what
And
has
the
been
first
huge.
couple weeks, it's not easy, right? It takes some time to get to that point. You're like, you know what? I love this. My son and I started about a year ago, and he's about 3 days a week with me right now, 15 years old. And so many times the night before, we're like, all right, 4:30, 4:30, and he's gung ho. But if he's like, yeah, Dad, well, what happens is my alarm goes off at 4:30. I know in my mind he said he's not going, and now it's just me. I'm like, no, I did stay up late, and 40, 50% of the time, I don't get up at all because he's not. And so he's my coach. I'm his coach. But that's awesome. That's so encouraging to parents is start with small steps. I always throw out the book that's helped me a lot. One of the many books that's helped me is Atomic Habits. Talks about
Oh yeah.
1%. Just start with 1 day a week for a half hour.
Yep.
Go do some exercise with one of your children and or whoever, a friend. But that
Mm-hmm.
accountability is such an important part of our consistency and discipline. So, encouraging things there. Backing up, and I'm not sure how we're doing on time here, but backing up to your teen years, um, is there anything you would like to share or talk on about just? I think it's so important for the audience to hear. So, whether you're a parent listening to this or whether you're a teenager listening to this, there's a key thing that's going on in our world right now, and it's lack of connection. It's lack of true, open, comfortable areas where you can talk about things. And I think that with having teenagers, and of course we've all been teenagers, um, just what goes through your mind as far as how you're raising your children, and you've obviously been through a lot as a family. Um, but like even going back to your teenage years, if you could just touch on a few things there for the listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's ultimately where it all started. It's why I wanted to go into even girls ministry and be the person that I needed, because the church was, and even school, everything was like an escape from home. My dad was an alcoholic and he was abusive, and I was the oldest of three kids. So I feel like most of my childhood and most of my teen years, especially, I don't know what it's like to be a daughter. I know what it's like to be a third parent. And so I took on a lot of the responsibility of the family and just became like the peacemaker and all of that. And when I was 13, it was a pivotal time. We kind of had moved around, mostly just still in Georgia. We moved to Tennessee for a short, brief thing, and I was fine with change. It was all, I'm like, I can make a friend anywhere, so that wasn't a big deal. But we had moved, and I got settled into middle school, and out of nowhere, I developed a hair condition, and it was based and stemmed from the trauma that I held inside, right? Like nobody knew what home was like for me. And, I hid that I knew a lot, that I even, heard my dad, at night. And, I never told my mom that, what I even heard that went on. And she thought we were oblivious, and I wasn't. I would cry myself to sleep, and I was scared. And I wanted to protect her. And then I developed a condition called trichotillomania. But there's a story in that too, because when I went to the doctor, what ultimately my hair was coming out. So I went to the doctor, and they looked at my parents, and they said, "Hey, I think she has this condition. I want her to see a psychiatrist." And the look of horror I'll never forget on my dad's face of them telling him that I needed help, not just like medicine, I needed mental help. He's like, "Not my daughter." So in that moment, I created a new narrative to protect my family because I was pulling my hair. I didn't know why. I was 13. Why did this start? Why did this even, it's like a subconscious thing that you start to do. It's similar if you're familiar with like cutting or other things where it's you take control because your life is so out of control. I didn't know what was going on, but in that moment, I felt the weight of my family on me, and I was like, I have to protect my family. So I said, you know what it is? It's just falling out. I mean, Tom, I had the top of the top Emory University doctors. They gave me a diagnosis of this autoimmune disease and all of this, and I was like, there's my ticket. This is what I have. This is safe for my family to deal. So I just like I went with it. And my whole life I hid what was really going on and never got the help that I needed because I was trying to protect my family. And it was the same with, with alcohol. My friends had no idea what my dad was like. They had no idea what home was like for me. And I just always wonder if I had somebody that I felt open enough that I could just say, "Hey, can you help carry this?" Like this is heavy. And although I'm strong, like I need some support. And I wanted to protect my family, so there was never a thing I didn't feel like I needed help because that would hurt my family. So I carried this lie. I spoke on platforms all over, telling girls their worth is not in their physical beauty; it's found in their hearts for people, which is all completely true. But it still was on a story that wasn't completely true because I didn't feel safe for my own story to be accepted and palatable for the people around me. And it wasn't until actually 2020 that I made a video, honestly, and I just went public with it. And I said, I've hid this for a very, very long time. And I hate that this probably brings pain, but I ultimately I hid my whole life. And it was in that moment that I started to realize that my whole life had been lived for other people. And I think that if there's anything, any teenager out there, I want to encourage you. I want you to find somebody. You don't need to tell everybody. I'm not telling you that. Like your story deserves to be safe, but find an adult who genuinely cares for you and let them help you carry it. And because I think us finding the connection and finding the support is ultimately what the body of Christ is all about, right? And but to really have the freedom to be yourself and to know that your junk is safe. I ended up creating a community for high school girls called The Table. And the whole idea is that we all have a seat at the table. We all have the opportunity for genuine fellowship and genuine community. And so finding your table wherever you are in your community, which is just a group of people where you feel safe to just be vulnerable and share your story and get help and not carry shame in something that doesn't need to be even, shame need to be carried in, but just letting other people, carry the weight with you. And I think that's ultimately what I would say. And just trusting that your story it can be safe and it's okay. And who you are to the core, like it's okay that my childhood trauma caused a condition that I couldn't control. And I wish I could go back to like 13-year-old Jen and be like, hey, you need someone to come alongside you and help you and carry you. You don't have to put the guard up 5 feet deep in this brick wall and feel like you have to put this armor on and go to battle alone. And that would be my encouragement for anybody who doesn't feel like their story is out there, or that they need the help, that they um, just just find a person and share it. That'd be my challenge.
That's very encouraging, and I hope that a lot of listeners share this episode. Um, Give me a moment. Uh, just kind of triggered some things back there. 20 years ago, I was um, privileged to be asked to. I don't know if that's the right word. I was asked to be the youth leader for a few years, and this was way, way, way before my addiction issues. Anyhow, so for a few years, about 5 years, I worked with teenagers, and I'd teach on Sunday. I would take them to play soccer and volleyball, and just it was a great time. Probably one of the best things I've ever done in my life. Back from 2003, I just got married and did that for 5 years. Probably 20 to 30 students on average. I would see two to three times a week. But I'll never forget the one time that was kind of the most, like, I didn't know what to do other than pray and comfort. And it did work, but the person was cutting, and the person is doing good now. It's been 20 years since then. Definitely God did it all. I mean, I didn't really know. I was at a loss really to how to help at that moment. But I challenge listeners, I challenge us to make sure we slow down enough in our day-to-day life that the second a person does trust us to share, that we don't brush past it. Right now, we know in our world that suicide and overdoses are going up, 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 up. Drug use and alcohol use are rampant. Why do people want fentanyl? Why do people want any of these drugs? It's to change the way they feel. Well, maybe if they had a person that they could connect with and say, the reason I feel this, and I don't even know why I feel, but I had this experience when I was 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I heard things behind the door that I didn't know how to explain. And what you shared today was beautiful, Jen. And I think so many people need to speak openly more about cutting, about, because again, it's to change the way you feel, and it's to feel, and not knowing how to deal with that especially a teenager. They're not fully developed, but yet there's these pressures, and what social media has done to our children. We just really need more discussions. I encourage you to continue to speak openly, specifically about those things. I'm going to go back and watch any of those videos that you've recorded, but it's so needed in this day and age to share what your experience was, and to never forget that, and to be that light for that next 10-year-old or 13-year-old or 15-year-old boy or girl that right now is having a bad day and doesn't know. Maybe they tried to open up to somebody and it got shot down. Maybe they opened up to somebody and all they did was gossip. And we all know the rumors about churches and this and that, a bunch of hypocrites. Well, change your circle, change your church, change your community, change your oikos, change your unit, your squad, whatever you want to call it. But find at least two, find at least 3 or 4 if you can. But even one, like you said, find one person that you can go to and say, I've been doing this thing to myself, whether it's cutting, whether it's alcohol, drugs, anything to self-medicate. And I don't want to, but I don't know how to stop, and I don't know who to trust. But I'm going to take a step of faith, and I'm going to trust you with this conversation. And please don't ever share this, because right now you're the only person I trust. But when that happens, we all need to just capture those moments and say, this really is could be a life-changing and a life and death conversation. And I don't know how else to encourage listeners and encourage especially teenagers that is the biggest I mean, God is there ready to do so much, but he uses other people to help each other. It's the confess your faults one to another. Well, you don't have to go around with a microphone and share it with everybody like I have. I get that. But find one person in your life that says, hey, you know what? I've been there too. I've been through that very same thing, and I got you, and I'm here for you. And let's meet once a day. Let's talk once a day. Let's meet once a week, and watch as so many changes can happen in just a few weeks. I mean, maybe 90 days at the most, but you start doing some counseling, you start hanging out with the right person and sharing and discussing an issue for 90 days, and you can really get through that like you have. But that was some real share there. And I think in everything we've discussed, and it might be because I am so active with discussions with families about uh, harming and drug and alcohol use and everything. So, what would be your thought if a teenager was hearing this right now on their first step? What's the first thing that comes to mind on how they could find a person to open up and trust? Say they, um, how would you advise to make that step of communicating with someone to trust them?
Yeah, I think first of all, I mean, if you are in the church, that if there is a leader, of course, that you trust, that would be the first thing, is just go. And I think that our fear is greater than the actual reality. Our fear is that they're going to judge me, or that they're going to do all the things. But when you find someone that you can trust, and that's where my biggest challenge to that is for the adults, like, be the safe place, make yourself available, put down the judgment eyes, put down all the condemnation, like, just listen. And and then for students to, again, find that person. I mean, I can't be all things to all people, but if my story resonated with you, like, go find me and let's connect. And but literally looking for someone who you appreciate who they are, and it even, if you're like in middle school, if there's a high schooler that you even look up to, then let it be that person. Or maybe it is your parents. Maybe you're scared to talk to your parents. And I guess what is so heartbreaking now is that my mom could have been the safe place, but I was so worried about her that I didn't go to her, and she wishes that I would have, right? And so for some of you, your parents aren't safe. For those of you that your parents are safe, go to your parents. Find a leader, find an adult. If you're looking for, I mean, I'm connected to a bunch of churches across the US from what I used to do. If you need a good referral, I'm sure Tom has, great connections. But that would be my first thing. Just find someone, and maybe it's a teacher. Maybe you have a social studies teacher that you just think is a great person. I just know that you're, it's going to be such a gift to them that you trusted them with your story, instead of feeling like you're going to be met with the big whip of shame. It's not like that. There's a lot of safe adults out there that want to help you hold your story and want to help you get the help and help you navigate where you're headed. And if you don't have an adult, I mean, going to your school counselor and finding resources that are available there. I know, working out of high school myself, we have a whole list of great resources that you can find. So just, what my biggest encouragement is, if you're hearing this and you're waiting for me to tell you somebody and you're like, okay, that's the person I need to go to. If there's anything stirring in your heart, and because you know that you need to go to somebody, my challenge to you is, before your head hits the pillow, whenever you listen to this, is to make a connection with somebody, because that is God stirring in your heart saying, yes, this is you. And don't wait, don't let your doubt creep in. Go find somebody that can connect you with, or be that person for you.
Absolutely. And if I was listening right now and wanted to look you up, what are some ways that I would find you to learn more about not just you,
Yeah.
but about resources and help?
Absolutely. I'm Jenn Gray on all platforms. My podcast is Be Genuine with Jen. Would love for you to check it out. But yeah, definitely, Instagram is probably my main platform. I'm just Jenn Gray on Facebook. begenuine@gmail.com, all of the places. But if you head to my Instagram, you can, definitely send me a DM. I'd love to connect, and I absolutely would love to help carry your story with you.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. I know we got a little bit longer here, a few minutes. It just makes me think, my personal story, and we'll get into that another time. But I love whenever there is that opportunity and a young man, actually any age, they can be older too, but, says, hey, Tom, something you shared. My big struggle as a teenager was those secrets I didn't share with anybody. I sure wasn't going to talk to my parents about pornography. I sure wasn't going to talk to youth leaders and, ministers and teachers. And so, of course, who did I talk to at all was friends that were doing the same thing or more. And so that just stuck with me for many, many years, along with other things that don't have time to get into. But being an open book like you have been today, like I do my best to be, it is a beautiful thing to see, even if it's, one a month or a couple a month of other people that hear this and reach out and say, I'm struggling with X, Y, and Z. Something you shared resonated. What are your suggestions? And then whether it's DM or text or any way they can get a hold of us is hey, some people I say, start with this. I think this book would be great for you. And also, hey, hit the gym, get some energy out, and then find a mentor, find a coach,
Yes.
find a counselor. I mean, I've done all the above. I've got a counselor, I've got a coach, I've got a trainer, I've got a pastor, I've got many men and women that speak into my life on a weekly basis. So I think that's so important to encourage people. Just because you go and hire a counselor and pay them doesn't mean you have a problem that's something to be embarrassed about. Some of the strongest people I know continue to visit and meet with their counselor. Maybe their issues become less or different, but always having a counselor, a coach, a trainer, a mentor. You be careful with friends. Friends aren't meant to really absorb and carry everything, and they can sometimes do more harm than good when you share something that's kind of private. So I
Mm-hmm.
just encourage the listeners, if something that you've heard today resonates, I'm sure Jenn would be happy to point you towards some things that's helped her in her journey. And, I know time went fast today, but being the mom of 4 children, having a full time job like you do with insurance, doing your book club like you do, a lot of things on social media to encourage and inspire other people, doing the podcast and still staying balanced and going to the gym with your daughter, having time for prayer, journaling, just amazing. I know my wife, and I got to do more episodes with her. We've only done one with the family, but she's an amazing lady that every morning has her routine. 21 years I've been married to her, and she has got up every morning and has her hour and a half before she homeschools the kids and does all that she does about her busy life. So we're all given 24 hours. We all have different amount of weight on our shoulders with bills and children and finances and all that stuff. But I think it's so important, that morning routine you shared and the books that you've shared with us today. As we close out, just again, thank you for doing this. I wish we had 2 hours. We're going to have to do it again.
Yeah, for sure.
Anything you want to share with the audience? This has just been a great, encouraging episode. I know I've learned a few things I'm going to put in my toolbox.
Awesome. Yeah, no, to wrap it up, I just want to encourage everybody again that life happens for you, not to you. And so just know that if you're in a hard season of life, know that you're learning something that's going to be so useful and going to build you up to be the strongest version of yourself on the other side. And know that life goes up and down like a roller coaster, but the only way you fail is if you just give up. So don't give up.
Mhm.
Keep fighting, keep believing in yourself. And again, surround yourself with people who will cheer you on genuinely and believe in you. Like you just alluded to, right? Finding those right people. It's not always just your closest friends, right? But finding those resources and those mentors in your life that can help take you to that next level. But yeah, and dive into your passion. And if you don't even know where to turn, my last thing with that is, if you do your morning routine and you still feel like this, you're like, I'm empty, I don't know what to do, you will never regret the value you add to somebody else's life. And even if that comes as a simple compliment or a text to encourage somebody else, if you feel lost And alone, my biggest challenge is reach out, add joy to somebody else's life today. And the joy that's going to happen in your own heart is incomparable to anything that you would ever give out. So, just keep being genuine and know that your authenticity is genuinely your superpower.
Beautifully said. And I'll close out with this saying, I think it fits in timely with service work and doing things for others. See if I can get it right. I slept and I dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and realized life is service. I acted and behold, service was joy. And I think so much of what you do, Jenn, and what we're working on over here at the Joy Hour is to do more and more service and volunteer work and let those arrows be pointing out. And when more arrows are pointed out, helping other people in any form or fashion, setting up chairs at an event, cleaning the floors, making the coffee, opening the door, helping the old lady across the street, anything, go work at the food bank once a week, anything like that really helps us get outside of ourselves, shut the phone off for an hour a day, really reboot and do some service and volunteer work for other people. It's so important. I know we're going to have another time to do this, but thank you, Jenn Gray.
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity.
God
It's an
bless
honor.
you and your wonderful children, and I look forward to someday meeting you in person.
Love it. Thank you again so much.
All right, take care.
Thank you so much for watching today's episode on the Joy Hour podcast. Don't forget to check out some of our other episodes for more powerful discussions. Want to keep up with new episodes? Be sure to subscribe. And as always, we'd appreciate it if you like, share, and comment your favorite part of this episode right down below.